Today we're going to talk about scrolls and scrolling. I've got some examples of scrolling here. It's a very common blacksmithing technique, mainly decorative, but done in all sorts of different ways, from the very sort of normal and decorative flat bar, round bar, even to the very, very small detailed scroll work that can be used as just as a fancy flourish at the end of some bar. And in order to learn about scrolling, the thing that you need to know is it's all about your consistency with your taper. If you can't get a consistent taper, you're never going to be able to get a consistent scroll. And the most important thing is to get that consistency right before you start scrolling up. I'm going to show you a few different ways. I'm going to get a taper on here, which is 20mm round bar. This is a monkey tail curtain pole that I make. I'm also going to show you the very fine work that goes into such small decorative scrolls like this at the end of a simple hook. This is going to be from 10mm round, this is going to be 20mm round. So I'll get the forge on, I'll get the power hammer going, and I'll start getting these tapers. You've seen a lot of me doing tapers, so I'm not going to focus hugely on filming that. If you're struggling with your tapers, by all means go to the taper tutorial that we have put on our channel. That's probably a good start for you. Otherwise, I'll see you once I've tapered these out and talk about the next steps. That's the tapers done on the 20mm bar. If you notice, the dies on my power hammer are quite significantly worn in the centre. Now normally that's a problem, but for long tapers like that it's actually quite helpful, because it means I don't have to use a flatter, which is this thing, to improve the surface. And actually that works really well for this kind of taper. I make these tapers a lot, so this wearing on the dies is actually quite useful. I've just put the ends back into the fire because the limitation of the power hammer is that it can't get very, very fine points, very fine tapers on the very end. So what I'm just going to do is take another little heat on the very end of that long taper on the anvil and just finish it off, refine the very ends by hand with a hammer. So that's the 20mm round done. What I'm going to do now is the 10mm round for the simple hook. This is going to require a much finer taper. Again, I'll use the power hammer, but the refining of the point is the bit that you really need to pay attention to afterwards, which is going to be on the anvil. But just to give you an understanding, I'm going to forge most of this, or most of this is going to be a taper. So this taper is going to get longer. I'm going to work on its consistency, keeping it nice and round, and then I'll refine the very point of it. So there's two tapers on very different bits of steel. We've got a long elegant taper on a bit of 20mm round, and we've got a very short taper on the end of a 10mm round. Both round tapers and both consistent. What I mean by consistent is that they've got a straight edge to them. There's no lumpy bits in the middle. They're not on the wonk. They're all the right shape, the right size. They're very consistent, and that consistency is going to allow you to get a decent scroll, which you'll see next. So this is the long taper on the 20mm round with a refined point on the end. It's basically ready to go. It's nice and smooth, as we said before, and basically what we're doing is we're going to aim to get a similar, I say similar, hopefully identical scroll. And the way you do that is you need to come over the edge of the anvil, and you're looking to hit into negative space. You don't need to hit very hard, it's more of a sort of brushing motion, and you want to put a bend in the first section of that taper so it starts to create a nice curve going round, and as soon as you're there you can turn it around and you can start to bring it back on the anvil. You'll see what I mean when I get it hot and start working it, but that's essentially what I'm looking to do. And as that starts, the centre of that scroll is formed, I can then continue to just stroke it over the corner of the anvil and just bring it back on itself. And the beauty of the very consistent taper is that it will itself provide its own resistance to being curved. So obviously where it's thicker, it's not going to be as easy to curve as where it's thinner. So you're going to get a much tighter curve on these sections, and if your taper is nice and consistent, it should work its way into an existing taper. But you'll see a bit more about what I mean when I get it hot. So as you can see, you can use the thickness of the material to get the curve to form easier. There are some bits here that could do with correcting, but that's okay because we can come back later when it's hot with some scrolling tongs. I'll show you that in a bit later. I'll need a second heat on this part. Trouble is, at this point it's getting very thick. It's quite difficult to bend with a hammer. That's not too much of a problem, but it's going to start to leave marks on the material as I hit it, because I need to hit it so forcefully in order to get it to start bending. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get this piece hot, and I'm going to use something here called bending forks. So what I've got here is some bending forks, just really simply made and welded onto a piece that fits nicely in my hardy hole. That's going to allow me to bend this manually once it's hot. You can already start to see a bit of a bend to it, but that's going to allow me to bend this thick section without leaving too many marks on the material, to keep it as clean as possible. And then once it's all correctly scrolled, I'm just going to come in, make little tweaks here and there to the bits that need to be tweaked, and then you'll see that basically finished off. There you go. So that's your basic scroll being formed. You can see here, this is the start of the taper. I kind of want to leave a bit of that straight to just keep the line going around it quite smoothly. And obviously, the longer this is, the longer the taper, obviously that's more difficult, but the bigger the scroll you can get. This works for me for the monkey tail that I'm making. If I come in and put a bend here on the other way, you've then got a monkey tail curtain pole that's going to match that. And as soon as you do that, you've got a saleable product. This is the thin section that's thinned down to almost a needle point here. I'm not going to scroll all the way back. This is going to become a hook like you've seen. This is just a great example of working something very, very small, very, very delicately. But exactly the same principle applies as with the monkey tail. I've just got to get that started. I've got to work quite quickly because it's going to lose heat very quickly. But I'm just going to get that started, and you're going to be gentle, and it might look like I'm using too big a hammer, but this one suits my hand and it fits me right, so I'm going to use that. Just get that scroll started. The first curl over is really important. Once you get to that point, you can kind of just hit it back into itself, and as I said, the thickness of the material will allow that resistance and that curve to form. This is quick to heat up. Normally I do this in the coke forge, but I'm using the gas forge today just because it's on already. seen basically scrolls being formed freehand, and I'm sure you can see the effort that's gone into making something that essentially I want to be the same as each other all times. And I'm pretty close there, but obviously it took some time. The beauty about scrolls is that if you can make one scroll, you can make it in a certain way and make more scrolls. This is what's called a scroll jig. Essentially, it's quite a thick piece of material, and it's been forged with an offset fishtail on the very end. Okay, I made this a long time ago, which is why it looks so ragged, but it does the job. And what I can do, because this sits higher, it allows me to hook into this point and start forming the scroll around here without this section being in the way. Once it comes around to about here, I can drop the whole work down in this jig and use this to form the scroll itself. And this, once you get this to be correct and how you want it, this then becomes your best friend, because you can make exactly the same scroll exactly as many times as you want with very little effort. So I'll show you that now. So having put a very short taper onto the end of this, a flat chisel taper, I've just curved the end over just to get that scroll started. What I'm going to do now is get a really long heat on this, bring it out and just quench the very end of that so that the scrolling jig can hold that in place, and the rest of it can just get twisted around the scrolling jig. And you'll see how quickly using a scrolling jig can be to make quite passable scrolls that need very little touching up and adjustments afterwards. So there you go, that should be all you need to know about scrolls. Freehand and using a scroll jig as well, that I'd thoroughly recommend. I'd thoroughly recommend you making it slightly better than I have made mine, considering I made mine probably about nearly 15 years ago. You're going to get out what you put in. So you can see there's certain flat spots, bits of the scrolling jig that I need to tweak in order to get consistently good scrolls. If I'm honest, I don't use this very often, but it's an example of how to speed up this process. As I say, it's all about the tapering, so go and check out that video if you're in any doubt about what to do about tapering, how to taper. Thanks very much.